Sometimes, the most dangerous thing you can do is open your front door, especially when the temperature has dropped to 30 below, the wind is howling like a dying animal, and the only thing waiting for you in the dark is a pack of wolves and a decision that will ruin your life or save it. Caleb Weston didn't want company. He didn't want trouble. He just wanted to be left alone with his grief and a bottle of whiskey. But when he heard that scratching at the door, something louder than the storm, he made a choice. He picked up his rifle and stepped out into the blizzard. What he found in the snow wasn't a wolf. It was a tragedy that was still breathing. If you love stories about survival, justice, and the kind of cold that freezes your bones but thaws your heart, you're in the right place. Do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and let me know in the comments. What's the coldest temperature you've ever survived? Because where we're going, the cold is the least of our worries. The wind in Montana doesn't just blow, it hunts. It searches for cracks in the walls, gaps in the window frames, and weaknesses in a man's spirit. Caleb Weston had plenty of weaknesses, mostly buried in the bottom of a glass, but on this night, the wind found something else. He kicked the door open, the wood groaning against the pressure of the drift. He fired a warning shot into the black void. The muzzle flash illuminated the eyes of the wolves, scattering them toward the timberline. And that's when he saw it. A bundle. A heap of rags face down in the snow, 10 feet from his porch. It wasn't a drunk ranch hand. It was a child. He dropped the rifle. The cold didn't matter anymore. He ran, his boots crunching through the crust, and flipped the body over. A girl, couldn't have been more than 11. Her lips were the color of a bruise. Her eyes were open, staring at a sky that didn't care about her. But she was clutching something. A bundle strapped to her chest. Caleb ripped the frozen blanket back. A baby, gray-skinned. Still. For a second the world stopped. The wind died. Caleb pressed his ear to the infant's mouth. Nothing. Just the silence of the grave. Then a flutter, faint as a dying candle flame. A breath. He didn't think. He didn't weigh the consequences. He scooped them up. The girl weighed nothing. The baby, even less sand, carried them inside. He kicked the door shut against the world and laid them by the wood stove. This is where the nightmare really began. He stripped the blankets off the sofa, his hands shaking, feeding wood into the fire until the cast iron groaned. He looked at the girl's feet. They were purple-black, no shoes, just wool socks worn through to the skin. She was wearing a cotton dress, thin as paper. Who lets a child walk into a blizzard dressed like that? The baby hadn't made a sound. Caleb unwrapped the shawl. She was tiny, too small for 7 months, skin like wax. He dipped a rag in warm broth, head heated on the stove. He pressed it to the baby's lips. Nothing. Come on, he whispered. It was the first time he'd spoken out loud in days. Don't you die on me. Not tonight. The girl on the floor gasped. It was a ragged, tearing sound. Her eyes snapped into focus, wild, terrified. She tried to scramble back, but her limbs wouldn't work. My sister, she croaked. Her teeth chattered so hard it sounded like bones breaking. Give her to me. Skin to skin. Mama taught me. Stay down, Caleb ordered, but his voice was gentle. You're freezing. Give her to me. It was a command, not a request. Caleb did it. He laid the infant against the girl's bare skin and piled every blanket he owned on top of them. The girl wrapped her frozen arms around the baby and held on like she was holding on to the edge of a cliff. Name? Caleb asked. Ellie, she whispered. Shajosi. 7 months. Where'd you come from, Ellie? Laramie. Caleb went still. Laramie is 40 miles south. I know. In this. On foot. Didn't have a choice. Ellie pressed her face into the baby's neck. Aunt Harriet put us out. The anger that flared in Caleb's chest was hot enough to melt the snow on the roof. He stood up, needing to move, needing to do something with his hands before he put a fist through the wall. He heated more broth. Why? Caleb asked. Why would she do that? Ellie took a sip of the broth. Her hands shook so bad Caleb had to steady the cup. Mr. Peyton. He owns the general store. He started coming for supper. Aunt Harriet, she wants to marry him. But he said he didn't want a woman with baggage. Said orphans are messy. Said we were eating her out of house and home. Ellie looked up, her eyes old. Too old for an 11-year-old. She gave me a loaf of bread and a jar of water. The water froze in an hour. She told us to walk to the mission in Douglas. Said if we came back, she'd have us arrested for trespassing. 40 miles. No shoes. Because a man didn't want baggage. You knocked on doors? Caleb asked. 5 farms, Ellie said, staring at the fire. First one, nobody answered. Second one, a man looked through the curtain and closed it. Third one, a woman opened the door, saw us, said I can't get involved, and shut it. Which farm? Red Barn, 10 miles south. The Hendersons. Caleb filed that name away. After that, Ellie said, I stopped knocking. I just walked. Josie stopped crying around noon. That's when I got scared. Mama always said a quiet baby is a sick baby. Caleb looked at the two of them. The wreckage of a family discarded like trash. He thought about his own empty house. His wife, Ruth, dead 2 years. His son, Daniel, gone, estranged, working in the mines because he couldn't stand the silence of this place. You're safe here, Caleb said. Ellie looked at him. We won't be any trouble. I can cook. I can clean. Please don't send us away. I'm not sending you anywhere. That night the fever hit. Josie screamed a weak, thin sound, and Ellie cried silently in her sleep. Caleb sat up in the kitchen, watching the fire, listening to the wind, and realized that for the first time in 2 years, he wasn't thinking about dying. He was thinking about how to keep something alive. The next morning, the sun broke over the mountains, sharp and blinding. The storm was over, but the aftermath was just beginning. When Caleb came in from the barn, he found Ellie in the kitchen. She was balancing on her frostbitten heels, holding onto the counter, scrubbing a pot. What are you doing? Caleb asked. Earning my keep, she said. I made porridge, found the oats. Sit down, Ellie. Your feet. They are fine. They are rotting, he said, blunt, but not cruel. Sit. He forced her into a chair. He knelt and unwrapped the bandages Had applied the night before. It was bad. Blisters, black tissue. She needed a doctor. We're going to town, he said. No doctor, panic flashed in her eyes. Doctors cost money. I have money. We can't pay you back. Did I ask you to pay me back? Caleb stood up. Get the baby. The ride to town was silent. Ellie watched the tree line like she expected an ambush. When they got to Dr. Foster's office, the look on the doctor's face said everything. Malnutrition, doctor, Foster said later, stepping out into the hall with Caleb. Dehydration, exposure, and those feet. She's lucky she won't lose toes, but it was close. How far did they walk? 40 miles. The doctor, a woman of steel and grit, looked like she might be sick. You need to report this, Caleb. This is attempted murder. I'm going to see a lawyer, Caleb said. Good. Because Harriet Crane isn't just going to let this go. Women like that, they throw things away, but they hate it when someone else picks them up. Caleb bought them boots. Good ones, lined with sheepskin. Ellie stroked the leather like it was gold. Nobody ever bought me new shoes, she whispered. Aunt Harriet gave me her old ones. I had to stuff the toes with newspaper. When they got back to the ranch, Caleb wrote 2 letters. One to a lawyer named Henry Blackwood. The other to his son, Daniel. Asterisk Daniel. Asterisk it read. Asterisk was the first I know we haven't spoken. I know you blame me for your mother, but I found 2 girls in the snow. They need a home. I need you to come back. Not for me. For them. Asterisk days turned into weeks. The ranch, usually silent as a tomb, began to wake up. Ellie cleaned like she was fighting a war. She cooked, she mended, she sang to the baby. And Josie started to smile. A toothless, gummy grin that could crack a stone heart. But peace doesn't last. Not when there's a villain in the story. It was a Tuesday when the buckboard wagon rolled up the drive. Caleb saw it from the barn. He saw the woman in the black coat, stiff as a rod. He saw the thin, nervous man beside her, Harriet Crane, and Mr. Peyton. Caleb walked to the porch. Ellie was standing in the doorway, clutching Josie so hard her knuckles were white. "Get inside," Caleb said. "She's here," Ellie whispered. "She came for us." Inside. Now, Caleb stood on the porch steps, crossing his arms. Harriet climbed down. She was a handsome woman in a severe, cold way. She looked at the ranch with a sneer. "Mr. Weston," she said. "I'm Harriet Crane. I believe you have my nieces." "I have 2 children I pulled out of a snowbank," Caleb said. "I don't know who they belong to, but they don't belong to the woman who put them there." Harriet stiffened. "I did no such thing. They wandered off. They are difficult children, particularly the older one. A liar and a thief. She walked 40 miles barefoot," Caleb said, his voice low. "She kept an infant alive with her own body heat. That doesn't sound like a liar to me. That sounds like a hero." Mr. Peyton cleared his throat. "Now, see here, Weston. We're prepared to take them off your hands. No harm done." "No harm done?" Caleb laughed, a dark, humorless sound. "Dr. Foster documented everything. Frostbite, starvation. I've got a lawyer filing for guardianship on grounds of abandonment and attempted manslaughter." Harriet's face went pale, then red. "You have no right. You are a single man. A drunk, from what I hear. No judge in this territory will give you 2 little girls over their own flesh and blood." "Then let the judge decide," Caleb said. "Get off my property." "This isn't over," Harriet hissed. "I will not be humiliated by a rancher." "You humiliated yourself when you chose a man over your sister's kids," Caleb said. He looked at Peyton, and looking at him, "Mom, you made a bad trade." They left in a cloud of dust, but the threat hung in the air like smoke. The court date was set for March. The winter dragged on, but inside the house, it was warm. Caleb stopped drinking. He couldn't risk it. He needed to be sharp. He needed to be a father, but he was scared. Harriet was right about one thing: the law favored blood, and the law looked sideways at a single man raising young girls. Then, 3 days before the trial, a rider appeared on the ridge. It was Daniel. He looked older, harder. Coal dust seemed permanently etched into his skin. He rode into the yard and dismounted. Caleb stood on the porch, his heart hammering. "You came," Caleb said. "For the kids," Daniel said, not making eye contact. "Not for you." "That's enough," Caleb said. Daniel walked into the kitchen. He saw Ellie stirring stew. He saw Josie banging a spoon on the high chair. He saw the life in the house that had been dead for so long. "You must be Daniel," Ellie said, wiping her hands on her apron. "Your dad says you're stubborn." Daniel cracked a smile. He would know. That night, for the first time in years, the table was full. Daniel watched his father with the baby. He saw Caleb wipe Josie's face, saw the gentleness in his hands. The anger in Daniel's eyes began to soften. The day of the hearing was gray and sleeting. The courtroom was packed. Small towns run on gossip, and this was the main event. Harriet's lawyer was a shark from the city. He painted Harriet as a distraught aunt and Ellie as a runaway delinquent. He painted Caleb as an unstable, grieving alcoholic. "Mr. Weston," the lawyer paced in front of the stand. "Is it true you live alone?" "My son lives with me," Caleb said. "Since when?" "Since 3 days ago." "Ah, convenient." The lawyer smirked. "And do you have any experience raising girls?" "I'm learning." "Learning," the lawyer scoffed. "Your Honor, this man is clearly looking for free labor. A domestic servant for his ranch." A murmur went through the crowd. Caleb gripped the rail of the witness box. Then it was Ellie's turn. She looked so small in the big wooden chair. Her feet didn't touch the floor. "Ellie," the judge asked gently, "can you tell us what happened that night?" Ellie looked at Harriet. Harriet stared back, her eyes hard, daring the girl to speak. Ellie took a deep breath. "Aunt Harriet told me to take Josie to the barn when Mr. Peyton came over because her crying annoyed him. It was 10 degrees. I sat in the hay and wrapped Josie in horse blankets." The courtroom went silent. "She told me Ellie continued, her voice shaking but gaining strength, that ungrateful children walk barefoot. She said it was in the Bible, but I read the Bible. It's not in there. She looked at Caleb. Mister, he didn't know us. He opened the door. He put socks on my feet. He fed Josie before he fed himself. He didn't ask for anything. He just wanted us to live. Harriet stood up. She's lying. She's a manipulative little sit-down. The judge banged his gavel. One more outburst and I will hold you in contempt. Then Henry Blackwood, Caleb's lawyer, called his final witness. I call Mary Henderson to the stand. A woman in the back row stood up. It was the neighbor, the one who had closed her door. She walked to the front, looking at the floor. Mrs. Henderson, Blackwood said, did you see these children on the night of the blizzard? Yes, she whispered. And what did you do? She started to cry. I was scared. My husband was away. I saw them. I saw they had no coats. But I closed the door because I didn't want to get involved with Harriet Crane's business. Everyone knows She trailed off. I closed the door, and I haven't slept a night since. She looked at Caleb. Thank God you opened yours. The judge looked at Harriet. He looked at Mr. Peyton, who was currently trying to slide under his bench. He looked at Caleb, sitting with his arm around his son, holding Josie on his knee. The law, the judge said, taking off his glasses, usually prefers blood relations. But blood is not just what runs through your veins. It's what you spill for each other. It's who bleeds when you hurt. He looked at Harriet. Mrs. Crane, you are unfit, not just as a guardian, but as a human being. Your petition is denied. He turned to Caleb. Mr. Weston, I am granting you full custody, pending a 6-month probationary period. If you wish to adopt, we can finalize it then. Ellie let out a soba, loud, ugly, beautiful sound and buried her face in Caleb's coat. Caleb held her tight, his eyes meeting Daniel's over the top of her head. Daniel nodded. It was a small gesture, but it bridged a canyon. The walk out of the courthouse felt different. The air was still cold, but the sun was warm. Harriet was waiting by her carriage. Mr. Peyton had already left, walking briskly down the street away from her. She looked smaller, older. You think you've won, she said to Caleb. But they are hard work. They will break your heart. Maybe, Caleb said, but he'll be there to pick up the pieces. You're going home to an empty house, Harriet, and you earned every inch of that silence. She watched them go. She watched Daniel lift Ellie into the wagon. She watched Caleb secure the baby carrier. She watched a family that shouldn't exist drive away into the afternoon light. That night back at the ranch, things were quiet. The good kind of quiet. The fire crackled. Ellie was reading a book Daniel had brought her. Josie was asleep in her crib. Caleb stood on the porch, looking out at the snow. The wolves were out there somewhere, howling at the moon. The wind was still hunting. But the door was locked, and the rifles were loaded, and inside there was life. Daniel stepped out, handing his father a mug of coffee. "I'm going to stay," Daniel said. "For a while. Help with the fencing." "ID like that," Caleb said. "Ellie's a good kid." "Tough. She had to be. You did good, Pop." Caleb felt a lump in his throat the size of a fist. "I just opened the door." "Yeah," Daniel looked out at the dark. "But that's the hardest part, isn't it?" 6 months later, the adoption was finalized. They changed the name on the mailbox. Asterisk the Weston family. Asterisk years later, when Ellie was grown and Josie was running the ranch, they would tell the story. They wouldn't talk about the cold or the hunger or the cruelty of a woman named Harriet. They would talk about the man who heard a scratch at the door and chose to answer. So, here's the thing about storms. They reveal who you are. They strip away the excuses and the polite lies, and they leave you with a choice. You can close the curtains and pretend you don't see the suffering in the snow. Or you can open the door. Caleb Weston opened the door. And in saving them, he saved himself. If this story hit you somewhere deep, hit that like button. It helps more than you know. And if you're new here, subscribe and stick around. because the world is full of storms, and we all need a place to come in from the cold. I'll see you in the next one. Stay warm.